Well, the definition of an annuity is something where you will get an annual payment. Now, I'm going to talk about reverse mortgages. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. So, most of you know that I'm one of these old guys. I've been around 36 years doing this. And way back, as we old guys say, in the day, back in the 80s, wow, it was a long time ago, there was mortgages were out. But I never recommended them because they were, quite frankly, you just didn't know who you're dealing with. There was a lot of private mortgage lenders back then. Some of the big brokerage companies were involved with it. Very few banks did it, and some private companies. Well, there was a litany of federal charges, fraud, Ponzi schemes. There was all kinds of just bad stuff going on with reverse mortgages. And like everything, we are all humans that just get conditioned to think a certain thing based upon what we see in the press. And I always ask this question, if I said, what first comes to mind when I say Crest? Well, what does everybody think? Toothpaste. If I said Mustang, people think of cars. So we are conditioned by the information that we visually, auditorially take in on a daily basis. So if for a 10 to 15 year period, all you saw in the news was reverse mortgages are bad, they're rip-off, they steal people's homes, on and on, which they did, by the way. There were some legitimate places that were out there, but as a whole, I would never have recommended any of the reverse mortgages. So let me tell you what changed. This got the White House's attention, and when Obama got into office, this was back in 2008, he actually federalized the reverse mortgage program. Now, I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology, but some of the mortgage brokers that are listening today going, that's not what you call it. Well, I'm saying that the government took over and they said that when somebody takes a reverse mortgage, they have to be FHA qualified, meaning that the FHA has a guideline system in place. So as an example, they have to interview you to make sure that somebody's not trying to force you to take a reverse mortgage, to make sure that you don't have dementia or Alzheimer's or cognitive disorders. They explain the system to you. You see advertisements all over TV with Tom Selleck and other popular actors. And I try to explain to people that, when Obama took this over and federalized it, he also funded it. Now, again, I'm going on memory now. This is many, many years ago, and I think it was something like $600 million or $800 million, which back then was a lot. Doesn't compare to the stimulus today, but back then it was a lot. And what he did was he said, okay, I want to make this a legit program. Now, I have this incredibly skeptical side to me, only because after you've been doing this long enough, you see the back end of the government. I saw this in 1986 with the Tax Reform Act, where they, compressed the brackets into 3 brackets, and they swore this wasn't going to raise the taxes for anybody, especially the retirees. Well, I've been doing tax returns for a very long time, and I could compare year to year. When they put that thing into place, my retired clients' taxes were just destroyed. I mean, they were paying a lot more taxes, even though the government said that they pay less. So when the federal government came in with reverse mortgages and said, oh, we're going to give you this benefit, we want all seniors to have access to their home equity without any risk. Of course, my skeptical side the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And I start to see things like Social Security on the verge of bankruptcy by the year 2035. And now with the stimulus, they're saying, hey, maybe what we need to do is make Social Security a needs-based program. And what that means is they're going to look at how much do you have in equity in your house? How much do you have in IRAs? How much do you have in pension income? And if you can't justify that you need the Social Security, then it could turn into a needs-based program or an income penalty like they have with Medicare. So needless to say, I was pretty skeptical when this whole thing happened with reverse mortgages. However, setting that aside, the goal today is really to explain how reverse mortgages work, get rid of this poor and fake news that's out there that resides with people. Hopefully, I still get people. I had a guy that came in 2000 and this was 2008. This was after the program was federalized. And give you a quick idea, he had about a $330,000 house. He had $179,000 in an existing mortgage. I think he was in his 70s at that time. My recommendation to him was take a reverse mortgage based upon your cash flow, get rid of your forward mortgage, and then you'll have downside protection. Well, he didn't listen to me. and he just continued on with the existing mortgage that he had. And then what happened? The value, the properties dropped, the value dropped down. So his house after the recession was worth about $150,000. So he's literally upside down. So now he's got a $179,000 mortgage, a $150,000 house. There's no way he can pay that off. However, if what he would have done was taken a reverse mortgage, he would have had zero monthly payment. But because he didn't do it, he still had to make the monthly payment on that $179,000 house. Now he's upside down. When that guy passes away, his family, because it's a forward mortgage, has to come up with the net owed from his estate. Had that been a reverse mortgage, that net equity would have been covered by the FHA insurance. So let me get into the actual explanation of this. Reverse mortgages, greatly misunderstood. They are simply a loan in reverse. A forward mortgage lends you a lump sum and you make payments back. Everybody knows how that forward mortgage works. And a reverse mortgage lends you either a lump sum or gives you a monthly income. Today I'm going to talk about velocity of money, so I'm going to really focus more on the lump sum. But again, when we're looking at pending 30 to 50% declines in the real estate market, when people say, oh, well, I want to leave my house to my kids when I pass away, I want it to be there. Look, if I have a $300,000 house like this guy did and a $179,000 mortgage, had he taken that reverse mortgage and paid off his house, all the monthly payments that he would have been making could have gone into a bank account. And then when he passed away, because his house was upside down, his family wouldn't have to pay back anything. So again, there's some positive to a reverse mortgage, even in what we're looking at in a massive decline in real estate values. What are the requirements? Well, the youngest person of the reverse mortgage must be age 62. The house must be your primary residence, and you must not owe more than your age-related loan-to-value ratio. So how does this work? Well, the older you get, the faster the government figures you're going to die. And the faster the banks feel like they're going to get their money back. So just like with an annuity, the older you get more income. Same with Social Security, which is an annuity. The older you get with a reverse mortgage, the higher the age-related loan-to-value ratio gets. So here's an example. Age 62, age-related loan value. Now I'm guessing. Look, these are just examples. Don't hold me to this exact percentage. The loan-to-value is 30% because it's also based upon zip code too. There are differences based upon what region of the country that you live in. But anyway, let's say it's 30%. You got $100,000 house value. The existing mortgage is, say, $75,000. Now, you're only going to get $30,000 of the $100,000. Well, you can't pay off the first mortgage, so they won't do it. Otherwise, you got to come up with the other $45,000 to pay off the mortgage. Example 2, age 70, age-related loan-to-value equals 50%. Let's say I have a $100,000 house. Well, now what happens is the existing mortgage is $15,000. The reverse mortgage is going to provide $50,000, right? The house is worth $100,000, $50,000 age-related loan to equity value. I'm going to get $50,000. I'm going to pay off the first mortgage of $15,000, and voila, I got $35,000 left over. So hopefully that'll give you the basis of it. Now let's talk about a couple other things with a reverse mortgage. The amount of money you borrow does not have a monthly payment like a forward mortgage. So here's how it works. Let's say that you borrow $100,000 and you're going to have, let's say, a $500 a month mortgage payment going back to the bank, and that might be amortized over a 30-year period. That's not how a reverse mortgage works. They're going to give you the lump sum. That lump sum is yours, tax-free, as you'll see in a minute. And you don't have any monthly payback. You don't have a monthly payment. It's funny because I've done these kinds of teachings and classes, from college educational classes to public seminars. You should see people's eyes when it's like they don't get it. They're like, well, wait a minute, how are they going to give me $50,000 and I don't have a payment back? What they're going to do is they're going to take the interest that's on that reverse mortgage and they're just going to add it to the balance. Even when I explain that, people still come back and they say, yeah, but where's the payment? There is no payment. You're not making a payment back. What they're doing is they're saying, here's $50,000 if the interest rate is 4.5%. And by the way, if you have an existing reverse mortgage, what do you do now? get the thing refinanced, for goodness sakes. You got one of the lowest interest rates in history. Go back and refinance it. And do it fast, because they're going to base it upon the value of your property. If in 8 months from now the value of your property is worth 50% of what it's worth now, you might not be able to refinance it. So get on that. Get that reverse mortgage financed right now. So you don't have a payment. So that $50,000 is on the house as a lien. Now, some people will say, well, they're going to own my house. Well, it's not any different than a forward mortgage. Look, if I have a $100,000 house, that's in my name, right? It's in the deed is in my name. Well, hopefully, if you follow anything I do, it's actually in your trust, not in your name. Don't ever put a house in your name. Let's say it's in your trust, and you have a $100,000 house, but you borrow $50,000. Does the bank own the house? Of course not. It's still in your name. You just owe $50,000 on it. No different with a reverse mortgage. The house still stays in your name. It's still your house. If you have Medicaid issues, it's still protected because it's still considered your house. It's just a debt on that house. Now what happens is that $50,000, you have to pay the interest will accumulate on that $50,000. So the mortgage is due upon death. Now there are some reverse mortgages that you can take that are what's called term certain, 10 years, 20 years. Do not ever do those kind of mortgages. Ever, 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 ever. Why? You don't know when you're going to die. What if you can't come up with the funds by the 10th year? You got to sell the house. And that's not a good thing. So don't ever take it. Take a life only, because you can still refinance a life only house. Life only says that the mortgage is not due until you pass away. And when you pass away, the beneficiary has some choices. The bank does not take your house. This is another total misunderstanding. People will say, yeah, but when I die, they take the house. No, they don't. If you have a house with a forward mortgage and you die, do they take the house? No. Your beneficiaries have to pay off the mortgage, and the beneficiaries keep whatever equity. It's no different, right? So what happens is the beneficiaries have some choices. Sell the house, pay off the mortgage, keep the equity above what is owed. Or they could pay off the reverse mortgage and just keep the house. They get the choice. They're not forced into anything. Along the way, you can refinance the reverse mortgage to either get more cash out, or, like I'm suggesting right now, reduce the interest rate, because this way it will accumulate less. Now, if you can reverse mortgage it right now and take more cash out at a low interest rate, and then do what I'm going to show you with what's called velocity of money, you might be much, much further ahead. How is the money that's taxed or that you take out taxed? It's not. It's 100% tax-free. Why? Earned income or passive income, like you go to work, you have a job, you have a business, or let's say you have a stock that pays a dividend. That's either active income or passive income. That's always going to get taxed. When you borrow money, you don't get taxed. Now, there's a couple little caveats to that. You've heard some of the things I've talked about, such as the Trump tax reform. If you exceed the $750,000 limit on a forward mortgage, you can't deduct the interest. Now, that is different than a reverse mortgage. A reverse mortgage, no matter what amount you take out, it's going to be tax-free. You do not pay tax on that lump sum. So let me give you example number one. Value of the house is $100,000. Age 70. No mortgage on the house currently, and the age-related loan to value is 50%. You're going to get a check for $50,000. How much of that is taxable? Zippo, zero, zilch, right? So you're going to assume a real estate grows by 3%. We're also going to assume that the reverse mortgage interest rate, what is that? Well, you go take a forward mortgage, you got an interest rate on it. The reverse mortgage is going to have the same. So let me walk you through. Start at the bottom, down here, year one. I've got $50,000 beginning balance. That's what they gave you, right? They're going to give you a check for 50 grand. The interest rate on that reverse mortgage is 4.5%. The house value is 100 grand. If you die in that year, you borrowed on Monday, and on Tuesday you die. Well, your kids are going to owe 50 grand. If you wait 1 year, the amount of the reverse mortgage is going to grow that is owed from $50,000 to $50,750 because it's going to gain that 4.5% interest. However, if we're assuming that the real estate only grows by 3%, now your house is worth $103,000. If you die, you got to pay off the $50,750. Kids are still left with $52,000. On and on. I think you can just go through this. $53,000 the next year. They're going to get back $52,967, which is still more than the first year, fourth year, on and on. I could probably run this thing out 20 years. You get the idea, right? So now what happens? Well, let's go to the next year. How to create velocity of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my house, Now, I want you to keep in mind when I give you this example, I'm going to give you the example of something that I think is a safer investment. Now, I know that there are annuity salespeople out there trying to convince people to take a reverse mortgage. And there has been a problem with that because in most cases, the amount that the annuity is earning is going to be less than the amount of interest being calculated on top of the reverse mortgage, which is why almost every state that's a member of the NAIC, which is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, now has a question on their applications. Did you borrow money or take a reverse mortgage to come up with this money for an annuity? So if that annuity salesman is trying to convince you of doing that, back out, call our office. We'll do the analysis on it. But I would highly, highly doubt that that's a good maneuver. I'm going to show you a different maneuver, and I'm going to tell you the second thing I would never do. Do not do a reverse mortgage and buy the stock market. You want to buy things that will be at the same or greater potential rate of return without that amount of risk. Now, what if somebody came to me and said, look, Ken, I got a car loan, I got credit cards, I got all this stuff, I'm paying 10, 15%. Would it make sense to do a reverse mortgage? It might. As long as you are not a consumer that the minute that credit frees up, you're going to go back and charge it again. So one of the things I learned very early in my career, I think I was 3 years in, as I was still as an intern, and I never forget this. So this dentist and his wife, they owned this pretty successful practice. This is back in the 80s, and he asked us to come out to their house back in the day when we used to make house calls. And we show up at his house, and I'm just sitting there taking notes, and the financial planner there says, well, tell me about your debts. And I don't remember what it was, but I know they had tons of car loans, credit cards, mortgage, all this kind of stuff, personal loans. And so the financial planner said, well, the best thing we can do is we'll refinance your house, and we will get rid of all these debts. It'll lower your monthly payment. Then you could put that into savings for your retirement, for your safety. They didn't have anything. They had no insurance, no cash reserves. It was terrible, right? So the client signs on to it. I'm sitting there taking notes. I'm a 3-year intern, right? So we go back about 3 months later, the guy had refinance. And this is no joke. We're driving up to this guy's house, and it's literally like a construction site. There's all these trucks, all these people in hard hats walking around. You hear saws and jackhammering, and we're like, what the heck is going on? It's this guy's house, right? So we go back into this guy's house, and the guy I was with at that time, who was the senior financial planner, he says, I don't understand what's going on. He goes, well, Michael, we had this great idea. Since you freed up this much money each month, we went back and borrowed a couple $100,000 more because now we have extra cash flow to pay for it. First lesson, don't always do a refinance. Understand who the client is. And if they don't have that self-control, then don't show them how to do this, because you could end up hurting them more than helping them. That might be you. So if you are not in control of your credit and you don't have good stewardship of the money, meaning that you don't have good willpower, then I wouldn't suggest this. However, if you have good willpower and you're really working with somebody that can walk you through this and help you with this and make sure you don't make any mistakes, let me give you an idea. How to create velocity of money. So we have a $500,000 house now. I'm going to make the assumption here of two things. One, you're going to do the reverse mortgage within the next 30 to 40 days. Number two is when I show you about buying the vacation house, you're not going to do that until the first quarter of 2021, because we're going to see a huge drop in real estate, and we would want you to get the best possible value out of that. So here, step one, we have a 70-year-old with a $500,000 house. What we're going to do is we're going to take out a $300,000 reverse mortgage. What are we going to do? We're going to go buy a vacation house. Call it a $300,000 vacation house. We're going to make the presumption that you're going to rent it out with not use. You're going to put it up on Airbnb or hire a property manager, make life easy. Look, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to our YouTube channel or go back to our Facebook channel and look up 2 different presentations, webinars, broadcasts that I did on how to utilize real estate investments in this coronavirus, in this crash in the next 2 years. That'll give you a lot more detail. For now, we're just talking about reverse mortgages. We're going to make the assumption you buy a vacation house, right? $300,000. Now, here's the velocity of money at work, and I love this. This is to me, if I was an artist, this is a beautiful sculpture. This is how it works. Net equity of house. So what I've got is I've got a house here. I borrowed out $300,000. I've got $500,000 house. What is my net equity? I've got $200,000. We're going to make the same presumptions as listed below with the growth rates. So each year that net equity is going to grow, right? It's going to be minus whatever the reverse mortgage is owed. Now what I did is I borrowed $300,000. I went and bought a vacation house for cash, right? Is this right? Are you going to go buy it for cash? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to explain to you the beauty of a reverse mortgage, the mathematical wonder of velocity of money if you use it. You might not. You might actually buy $1 million house, use the $300,000 for a down payment because the cash flow and the tax deductions might work better than actually buying a house for cash of $300,000. Just showing you how this concept works. Okay, so you get the value of the rental, $300,000. Next year it's worth $313, $327, $342. Let's say that after I spend my vacation time in that house, I'm still going to rent it for when I'm not there. And let's say I'm going to use some minuscule number, say $500 a month in net rent. I'm only going to bring in net of $6,000 per year. However, because I get to write off the depreciation, not only is that $6,000 going to be tax-free, but I'm going to get an additional deduction that I can take against my ordinary income tax of $3,500. My net gain that year is going to go up to over $35,000 or $33,000 just by the fourth year. Let me go back and let me conclude this with one of the other important factors that we're not really talking about here is the negative equity insurance. So let's say that I have a house right now that's worth $500,000, and let's say I go borrow a reverse mortgage of say $300,000, and now my house goes down to $250,000, and because of this real estate crash, I die in 2 years, and my beneficiaries do not owe anything, but I got $300,000 sitting in the bank. Well, that's more than the house would have been worth at $250,000. So there's some additional benefits. Now let me throw in my disclosure. I am not a mortgage broker. I don't sell mortgages. I don't refer people to mortgage brokers that pay me a commission. I have no financial gain by telling you this information. However, I do talk about a lot of these techniques in more detail in the book that I wrote back in 2016, which is Live Rich, Stay Wealthy, Total Retirement Freedom. I think we now have 3 books left. You can give our office a call and they will send you, just supplies limited. We got an overage from the publisher and we're just sending them out. You don't have to pay for postage. We'll just send them out to you. And it will help you understand some of these concepts. But hopefully this made sense, and to understand you, if you're at least age 62, you've got some real power. And I always get this question. People say, are you going to do this? You better believe it. I'm not 62 yet, but when I get there, you can bet your bottom donuts that I'm going to go get a reverse mortgage. So anyway, you can jump onto our YouTube page. You can follow us there, or you can actually go and find the broadcast schedule on hhrdm.com at events, and that will help you understand what some of the other things that we're talking about. Hey, thanks for joining, and hopefully this has been helpful to you. Stay safe.